All right, I hope everybody had a good month. So before we dig into this Fort Lauderdale real estate market update for the month of October, let's just take a quick moment to kind of look at the whole nation instead of just Fort Lauderdale for a moment. So sales across the nation fell to a 7-month low. The same reasons that happened nationally are some of the concerns locally, right? There's limited inventory for sale, so buyers have fewer homes to choose from, fewer sellers coming out to sell them, period. Of course, interest rates rising. You can't fight the Fed. You fight the Fed, doom and gloom. They wanted to stop the housing market. They did. And higher prices, right? The housing prices here locally, look, they've doubled in a short period of time. So nationally, the same thing. Prices of homes have just become more unaffordable than they were several years ago. So those are all the headwinds that we're coming into here on a national stage before we get into the local stuff. Let's look at the state of Florida for a minute. The biggest thing I see that is hampering us right now and really causing some problems is the insurance market. I've had old clients of mine show me insurance premiums that are up 300%. That's just crazy. You mix that in with buyers that are coming in to purchase a home. If that home has a roof that's older than 15 years, if they can get insurance, the insurance is wildly unaffordable for the most part, and it really messes up what somebody thought their monthly payment was going to look like. There were a record number of cancellations last month, contracts that bounced out, and I think that really had to do with somebody got a pre-qualification letter, interest rates have risen, say 2%, then you mix in what they thought was going to be their homeowner's insurance cost with what it really becomes, and it's just a lot of sticker shock, and it's causing a lot of cancellations. So that's kind of the state level. All right, now locally, we have had limited supply, and that has been a real problem. Mix that with stable or rising prices, which has kind of been the trend that we've been seeing here. Now, will that trend reverse? We'll look at some of the data. But for the most part, that's what's really been helping sellers is the fact that buyers don't have a whole lot of choice. So if they want to buy a home and yours is on the market, now's a pretty good time, to be totally honest with you. Buyers, we'll get into the data, but you're going to want to pick and choose your spots. Okay, first the data sourcing here. The data is going to be from September 1 to September 30th of 2023. I was using a market report that I pulled from the Real Estate Association. I'm not going to do that again. I can't make the numbers match up with what they're reporting, with what I see as closed sales on the MLS. It's just a disconnect, and I don't want to give you guys bad data. So I went out and found another data source. Those of you that have been watching this blog for a long time, this will look rather familiar. This is going to be more of a charting software, if you will. I'm going to go back to being a little bit more in depth. I kind of brushed over it last month, and a few of you that have been watching this or reading it on the blog for a number of years so politely emailed me and asked me what the hell I was doing. So I'll go back to the long form content for my data geeks. So let's start to dig in here. I'm going to get off this camera and I'm going to switch you guys to a screen share. All right, so look at this. I've got all kinds of fancy for you guys, huh? Pretty good. All right, for today's agenda, we're going to be going over the market data slides. We're going to start with single family homes, then go through condos and townhomes, go through distribution of sales by brackets, and then cluster of sales, see where things are actually selling and occurring and transacting. So let's get on with it, shall we? All right, median prices, $535,000. Let us look back. September of 22, $522,000, right? So year over year, we're looking at a price increase, but let's see how this looks here on a 5-year chart, which I'm going to revert to a bit. Here's my concern. Where do you see prices kind of moving? It doesn't look like a very bullish chart to me. A year over year from 522 to 535 is a snippet, and it's going to show you an increase. But I think this graph gives you more context. And I think it says a couple of things. Look, sellers, if you are on the fence and you're trying to decide whether you should list now, list later, you're not sure what to do, you're either going to bank on a trend reversal here, or you're going to want to get your property on the market sooner rather than later. To me, this doesn't look like a really good chart. It looks like median pricing is coming down. Now, let's also be fair. Median pricing could just be coming down because more transactions are taking place on the lower end of the market. So when we switch over to the price brackets, if we see a higher count of transactions on the lower side, maybe that's something to consider. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to find out. Number of properties sold. 155 in September of 2023. 134 September of 2022. So there's a 14.5% increase year over year. But again, let's look left. Look at that, man. 326 sales during the COVID highs. So we're transacting 50% less than we were during the highs of COVID, right? Now that being said, this is going to be a more favorable market now for buyers than it was during these 326 sales, when anybody who could feasibly sell their property and did really got top dollar. So I kind of want to point that out. I think it's good and interesting to note. List to sales price. So this is going to tell you a couple of things. First, how willing sellers are on the whole to negotiate on price. When we were up here and you were getting 100% of your listing price, did you really have to negotiate? No. As we move down, you're seeing some sellers that think we're still here when we're not. So they've had to do price adjustments from their original listing prices in order to bring buyers into the market and get interest on their property, right? So this uses the original listing price to do its calculation. So look, again, I think it's just something interesting to keep an eye on. I think as this, or if this figure moves down, it's just going to be something bullish for buyers. Sellers, it's again probably going to be something more of, if that number pulls down, it may be another sign that you want to head for the exit. If you're on the fence, of course. Median days to list. This is how many days it took from a property to go from active to pending. So the smaller number of days that you have, the better it is for a seller, right? Look at this. COVID. So we moved from 32 days, where we were here, down to 24 days. So that is a good development if you're a seller. Fewer days on market overall, good development for sellers. It does look like we're heading down. Now again, this could just be because sellers are getting the message that if you want to sell, you should price more aggressively than you were a year, 2 years, etc. ago. So again, something to keep an eye on. Something I think is interesting. Median square foot, as much as I absolutely love it, we're going to skip over it because we can kind of lump it together with that over there. A stat near and dear to my heart, total volume of sales. Couple notes here. There were a couple of record-breaking sales that had to wash through last month and that occurred the beginning of this month. So this is going to skew some data to the upside because these were $30 and $40 million sales, and 30 and 40 million on total transactional volume of 200 million. Obviously, it's going to drag everything up, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. But anyways, if we look at this longer term chart, here we are. Okay. I'm not totally convinced that we don't drop back down towards 150 million. Now again, next month it's not going to do that because we're going to have a couple of big sales that are going to bump this number up. But I think if you take those out, we're somewhere down here. So I think a little bit of perspective is a bit important there. All right, scroll down. The ever important months of supply. 6 months considered a balanced market, favoring neither buyers nor sellers. Man, it's been a long time since we've seen 6 months of supply, right? So sellers have largely controlled the market. Now, this trend line. Does it look like it's heading back up towards 6 months? Kind of looks like it to me. I think once we hit that balanced market, it's really going to say to sellers, now you've got to get aggressive with pricing. We've gone from down near 2 months of supply, doubled up here to 4, possibly headed to 6. So, we'll see how it plays out. I think it's something important to keep an eye on. If you're a buyer, it's still a tough marketplace. If you're a seller, though, you really may want to consider all these data points. And if you're on the fence, I kind of think, this might be the time to get it on the market. I promise to get this more organized for next month. I will have you know, I didn't sleep well last night because one of our dogs is not feeling well, and I had the pleasure of playing tea party with my daughter for 2+ hours. So I'm not putting my best foot forward in terms of mental capacity today. All right. Here we go. All right, so there's a lot going on with condos and townhomes right now. Rising association fees, assessments, upcoming legislation that's going to go into effect that came out of the Surfside collapse. So you kind of put it all together, and it's meant that there's a higher cost to carry a condo right now than there has been over the last couple of years. So that being said, if a condo association has already had assessments, they've done structural integrity work and inspections and so on and so forth, a new buyer could be coming into a building with all of those costs paid and shouldered by the current seller. So I do think there's some opportunity here. Townhome market, even though we lump them together for terms of the data here, completely distinct and separate from the condo market. It does remain robust in terms of demand, at least from people that call me. I get a lot of calls from people that want to buy a townhome, and I get it. You don't have to deal with the upkeep. You have your own space. It's larger than a condo. It's just a product that continues to have an appetite. So don't use this as a one-for-one with condos and townhomes moving together in unison, but for the data, that's what we got. All right, median pricing. Let's stick with this wide graph here. And honestly, we look pretty good, right? You can see low is to the trend line. Looks like we're bouncing off and heading up. So it looks like prices are still on the upswing here. If we move to a 2-year chart, just because. And we go to September of 22, there we are, 477. Median price 460. So we're down. We're down a little bit, but I don't know. I guess I'm not overly concerned, largely because townhomes are always in demand. Condos, a lot of them are beachfront, and we can't build any more ocean. Not yet anyways. Never know what'll happen in the future. All right, number of properties sold, 129. Where were we? 186. So So that's a little painful, right? 36% fewer condo and townhome sales this September versus a year ago. Brutal. Brutal. No other way to say it. Let's expand the data out. What does that look like to you? Doesn't look good to me. Looks like transactions on condos and townhomes sliding. Keep in mind, here was kind of where we were several years ago. Here's 100, right? Do we reverse? Do we go down to that 100 sales? I don't know, but something definitely keep an eye on, because at the end of the day, nothing else really matters but sales. So important, I would say. Here we are, list of price. Look at how crazy we were. Sellers had a reckoning. Moving back up, pricing more towards the market. I think it's a theme that's going to be repeated. There's usually a disconnect between my wonderful viewers, which keep up to date with the market and know everything about pricing, versus the general public, which stays a few steps behind. So if you still think we're here, we're not. Sellers are going to have to negotiate a little bit more, going to have to get a little bit more aggressive. Median days. Look at that, though. Tells you sellers are getting the message. They're saying, well, if I'm going to put my property on the market, I want to price it on the downside so that I can get sold. Not near COVID lows here, 16 days. Still respectable. Look across here. I mean, this is where we were all before COVID, right? Took 60 to 80 days, something like that, to sell a condo. Only takes you 28 days now to sell a condo or a townhouse. So this is still a strong market for sellers. Still a strong market. Skip over this. Show it to you real quick. So things get interesting here. Take a look at this total. Let me move to a 2-year chart. That's the total volume of condo and townhome sales. That doesn't exactly look like we're on the upswing. Now, this can mean a few things. What it could mean is there's more sales happening on the lower end of pricing. More sales on the lower end going to lead to lower total volume, but still a healthy market in some price points. But yeah, that's a pretty brutal decline. All right, let's quickly move over 2 months of supply. Look at this, where we were. I mean, this is wild. Talk about a buyer's market. 6 months is here. Look at how we change. Are we coming back up towards a buyer's market? Kind of looks like it, right? Kind of looks like it. All right, so let's look at these sales bracketed by price point. I think this is a really interesting way to look at the market, and here's why I think it's so interesting. Let's say you're considering selling a home that's priced, I don't know, let's call it between $2 million and $5 million. So we're going to be here, $2 million and $5 million. So 2.5%, 2.5%, call that 5, add another 2, 7%. So 7% roughly of the transactions occurred between $2 million and $5 million. That is a large bracket in pricing, $2 to $5 million. To have a lower number statistically than a lot of other brackets, right? So we can say it's kind of a slow-moving market. Also, if you came to me and you said, hey, Casey, I got a home, I want to list it. I think it's worth, I don't know, somewhere between $4 and $5 million. How many sales occurred between 4 and 5 million last month? Are there buyers looking between 4 and 5 million? What do you think? You may just not want to list that right now, to be totally honest with you. If you don't have to sell it and you're looking at this data, you may just want to keep it off the market. Now, you have something spectacular and you say, hey, got something over 5 million. Well, look, there's buyers for over that 5 million. Over 9% of the market was made up in that over 5 million. There's a reason for that, right? Nothing in this price range, or it's very likely that nothing in this price range is going to be subject to financing. It's not interest rate sensitive. So you've probably just got a cash buyer that interest rates don't really affect them much. Now let's look at a couple of different price brackets. Let's look at below $1 million. Back of a napkin, total it up, 58% of the market right now selling below $1 million in single family homes. That's a big number. This is where the bulk of the action is happening. Single family homes below $1 million. So if you have something that you're considering selling and you're below $1 million, especially if you're between 500 and 750,000, might be a good time to put it on the market. Buyers, recognize you're going to have competition here. Buyers, if you come to me and you say, hey Casey, I'm thinking about buying something. I don't know, I guess I want to be somewhere between 4 and 5 million. Let's go shopping. Because I know that people in this price point, they're not seeing offers right now. So we're going to have a lot of room to negotiate. So for me, this is what I like to see when I'm representing a buyer. This is what I like to see when I'm representing a seller. Right? So between 1 and 2 million, that makes up approximately 24% of the overall market. So that is still pretty healthy, right? Between that million and 2 million, almost a quarter of the total market share. So there's some movement there. I mean, again, it's not like here, but it's healthy. So I think these things are really important for you to look at for overall context in the market and get away from just where the statistics that I present in the other slides say things are happening, and really look at, on a bracketed price level, where is the action happening? So I'm pointing this out more and more. I'm going to start, I think, putting heavier focus on it, because I just think it's showing the dichotomy of our market right now. And it is fragmented, but buyers have spots in here, sellers have spots in here, and I think it's important to know where you are relative to the rest of the market. More than 75% of the action happening on the lower end, 750 and below, condos and townhomes. A lot of talk of all the pretty properties with oceanfront views, not making up the bulk of the volume. Bulk of the volume here, right? Now, let's do something brand new that I thought was pretty cool. And it came from one of you guys, somebody who was one of my 10 original subscribers to the blog before YouTube, when this all started about a decade ago, who turned into somebody who I represented on a purchase and then represented their child on a purchase and later sold a home for their parents. So anyways, said, Casey, I see the sales brackets. I get it. But where in Fort Lauderdale are the sales taking place under $1 million? It seems kind of crazy for a single family home in Fort Lauderdale to be selling for less than $1 million. Where is it happening? Excellent question. So I created a little photo. So here's what I did. I went into the MLS and I pulled those closed sales that are happening for less than $1 million. And we can see where they're clustered. I mean, let's be honest. It's a pretty good distribution of sales, right? I alluded to this last time. Here's 95. A lot of the action is taking place close to 95. You've got some up here as well. Now, because this is only data for Fort Lauderdale, if I had filtered in Oakland Park and Wilton Manors, this would be peppered with sales. So, I guess you can look at it and say, if you want to go kind of, this is 441 right here? Yeah. So if you want to look east of 441, west of US 1, that's where the sales for less than $1 million are taking place. What about townhomes and condos? This one gets real interesting. Distribution of sales looks different. But if you cut through the noise, here's what I see. Downtown Fort Lauderdale. The beach. That's where your condo and townhome sales are really happening. So again, just kind of cool to look at it from this view, I think, so that you guys can get an idea of, where everything is kind of happening. All right, guys. So that's what I have for you. As always, thank you for listening. I'm going to try to get this together in a little bit more of a coherent manner for next month. Leave me a little note if you like more of the in-depth charts and graphs versus just that one-off page that I did. I like diving in deeper, but it takes a bit more time. So thank you for bearing with me. Call, text, or email me with any questions. I would love to help you buy or sell a single family, a condo, or townhome, or whatever else you can think of in Fort Lauderdale. We'll see you guys next month.